What I'm seeing now is some hope. There's more hope to solve this dreadful problem in America than I've seen in many, many years. Because the harm from pornography is now so widespread in America, so widespread, that there are clinical practices springing up throughout the country to treat those who are harmed by this, those who are addicted by this, marriages who are falling apart. Many psychologists and psychiatrists are getting fully trained on what to do. We're also seeing a trend in various religions where the churches realize that they have a problem, and this is in every congregation, and this is many ministers who have a problem. The problem of the pandemic of harm from pornography is now recognized in America, and so there's hope. No one who has a problem should feel that they are without hope.
And summarizing Dr. Klein on recovery, on healing, he said that 4 things most predict success. It doesn't mean everyone has to follow this exact script, but in terms of people that now look back after years of healing, with years of sobriety, what characteristics do we see in most of those people that have that long-term healing? We see first, the individual has to be personally motivated to do whatever it takes. Second, they need to create a safe environment. That means as safe as they can. Nothing will be completely safe, but maybe passwords, filters, at least to help them get some time. Third, 12-step support. Note, 12-step recoveries involve a higher power. Spirituality, and I'll talk about that in just a moment. And fourth, a counselor therapist with special training in sexual addiction. So he found that those 4 things were required.
Yes, I'm a clinical social worker. I have studied this topic for many years and have received wonderful training in the secular world. But I have to admit that it is through the power and the Spirit of our Heavenly Father that people truly heal and truly come to a sense of purpose in their life. It is through the atonement of Jesus Christ that true healing and recovering occurs.
If you need help, get it now. Get it now. You saw this man on the videotape. 3 times he went back to porn, 30-year problem. It becomes that. People who are addicted to pornography will tell you, if they've been addicted to another substance, cocaine or alcohol, they'll tell you porn addiction is the worst. As the sheriff said, you get those images in your mind, you don't unsee them. They are there, always tempting. Get help now. And there are some wonderful places where you can get help. LifeStar is in your community, the LDS Family Services. Get help.
A statistic that some of you may be familiar with is that when asked the question 5 years later, so when a couple is having marital problems today and they're strongly considering divorce, and they work it through and they stay together, a significant majority of those couples, when asked, are you happy in your marriage today, say yes. It is worth whatever it takes to save your family. It is worth the effort.
And so I want to share, I'm going to start with a very non-threatening story. It's a childhood story that all of us are familiar with, and I would encourage you to consider if this is something that could be a launching point for discussion in your home. It is the story of Pinocchio. And if you'll recall the story of Pinocchio, it is a powerful tale of transformation and the distorting power of lies, even the disfiguring power of lies. It is also a tale of the transformation of a wooden heart into a real heart. And I think that has strong application to how many of us in our society and in communities have become literal puppets to pornography and have become hard-hearted, wooden-hearted, and their loved ones around them are crying and trying to reach out to them to no avail at times, because they have become so desensitized to those things that are sacred and precious and wholesome in their lives. And that is one of the most insidious effects of pornography, is it blinds us, it hardens us, it darkens everything that is light in our world. If you recall in the story of Pinocchio, the hopeful side of that story was that when Pinocchio was on the verge of drowning, he'd really gotten off track, and his nose kept growing and growing. He was associating with this terrible group of friends that kept leading him into all sorts of wild adventures. But the hopeful piece was that when Pinocchio made a promise to be true, brave, and selfless. True, brave, and selfless. And he became accountable to people to be those things. That's when he started turning things around and realized the importance of the relationships in his life and the importance of becoming a real and whole boy. I think it's a wonderful story that we can teach with youth and incorporate discussions about the power of lies and the value of relationships and being accountable to one another.
We can go forward in peace and in hope. We can harness the river of fire so that we don't get inside the boundary. We're on top of that rocket. We control it. It can take us to the heavens, to our destiny, if we choose to use it properly. Sexuality is a river of fire. It can either be used for us or against us. Some of the most wonderful, powerful, and amazing people I have ever met in my life are people who have come, men and women and couples, and women who've supported husbands and women in addiction, who have come out of the darkness and now have years of healing. And they spend their time now reaching back into the darkness, helping others who don't know the way because it's so dark. Just like kind of lifting them and carrying them, like Sam and Frodo, you remember from the Lord of the Rings. Remember on Mount Doom, right at the end, going up that Mount Doom, and the ring was so heavy. And Frodo said, I just can't do it. I can't carry it. And Sam said, I can't carry the ring, Mr. Frodo, but I can carry you. And he picked Frodo up and he carried him so that Frodo could complete his task and eliminate this powerful draw, this addiction, this ring, and get rid of it. And I know that as we go forward together, we can refuse to give in.
Generally, I have the opportunity to speak with LDS Social Services and do firesides and be a facilitator for their program. It has been a true blessing for me as a recovering addict. I am a recovering alcoholic, drug addict, sex addict, and I have been clean for 19 years, though my addiction has come in my life and been a part of my life. I'm 38 yesterday, so my whole life. Let me tell you about two stories real quick that I will refer to, and then I will go into a description of my addictions versus my life. First, I want you to imagine, because visual things are a very important part of our lives, we see things better visually. My daughter and I were going to piano lessons. In the middle of the road was a baby finch, and it was just sitting there. And if I would have just kept going, I would have hit it. So I pulled over, and we get out, and another gentleman pulls over, and he gets out, and he starts taking pictures of it because he can't believe it's just sitting right in the middle of a busy road. And I, of course, love animals, and so I'm trying to find something in my car to pick it up and take it home and save it, even though I don't know how to take care of birds, because I just want this bird to be okay. The second image I want you to think of is recently I was on a trip back home to Arkansas, and as I was coming back home, I was taking a drive from the Salt Lake City airport, and in front of us, as we're driving down the highway, 75, 80, a beautiful owl comes swooping sideways in front of my car. And it obviously had no idea I was there and every intention of picking up whatever it was swooping down to get. And instantly I hit it because I could not move, I could not jolt my car, and this beautiful creature, instantly its life was impacted. My life started in addiction. My mother gave me alcohol in my bottle. And I don't remember really anything different. She would do it privately for a long time to keep us quiet. It would help us sleep. And as I grew up then, I became an aide of my mother in selling drugs. Drugs was introduced to me probably at the age about 5 or 6. And then I found myself as I grew and it repeated, the addiction of drugs and alcohol became an active part of my everyday life. With that was morbid and grotesque abuse. As a child, I was beaten by my parents, sexually molested since the age of 3 by my grandfather and my uncle. By the time I was 12, I was fully addicted to alcohol, drugs, and my sexual addiction started because I moved out on my own. I couldn't take the abuse anymore, didn't know what else to do. I left home, moved out on my own, and in order to support my addictions, I began selling myself for sex, for money, in order to aid my addictions, as well as, I think mentally, it was taken from me, my sexual identity was taken from me my whole life. And I'd rather choose who I was going to give that to and empower myself rather than just have it taken. So my sexual addiction became a very big part of my empowerment in my life as a young girl. I was not doing well in school. I was on a work program. They knew that I did not live at home. And instead of having extracurricular classes, I would actually work at Taco Bell. But that just wasn't feeding me the way that I need to be feeded. So I quit that and I began to sell myself for money. By the time I was 18, 2 LDS missionaries knocked on my door. I was getting close to graduation, but I did not have good grades. And with a 1.5 GPA, I wasn't going to go very far. When the missionaries knocked on my door, that changed my life. But before I go into how that changed my life, there were 2 episodes in my life that happened that I remember vividly, and my thoughts around those episodes that made me realize that I truly was an addict. The first one is as I was being beaten by my father, he would tie us up to chairs. And he would take turns beating us. And one time he held a gun to my head and pulling our family dog over, shot him in the head instead. At that moment, watching my dog lay there, all I could think about is being drunk. All I could think about was masking that episode more than I could think about the life of this dog. My bottom point, where I feel like I hit rock bottom, was when I was 18, or just turning 18, and my friends came over to ask me to go out with them. And I was in an abusive relationship with a much older man in college. He wouldn't let me go, and I actually probably owe him some thanks for that. But my girlfriends, they went, and as I went to my balcony, and if you look at my balcony of where I lived, there was a train track. And I would play this game with my friends. We would stop on the train track and we would run around it and play this little drill. I didn't play this, but I watched them as they were playing it. And they were all drunk. And around the corner, we saw the train coming. And I tried to yell at them to stop, and they thought I was waving at them, and they started waving back at me. and the train approached and hit them, killing all of them but one. I realized then I had a choice to make. The choice was to either seek some help, which I didn't know how, or to die. There really wasn't any other choice. When addictions come into your life, it comes to a point that eventually it will get so bad for you that death is a better answer because you don't have any other answers. The LDS missionaries were my answer. They came to my door, and my smugness, I thought I was going to prove them wrong, and I thought I was going to make them look foolish. And in their sweet testimony to me, they bore testimony of the life I could have. Not understanding fully what it was, I did agree to put myself in a rehab center where I remained for a full year. During that time, for the first several months, I was in a lockdown facility because of suicidal tendencies. During that time, it was about 9 weeks in, I was throwing up in a toilet, and this lady come in and she would give us medications to help ease our addictions, our pains. And it was at that moment that I was throwing up. I'd been in there for quite some time, had gone through all this. I finally said, I think I have a problem. And she looked at me, she goes, no kidding. Of course you have a problem. But my story isn't about my addiction. My story is about my hope. L. Tom Perry says, one of the greatest weaknesses in most of us is our lack of faith in ourselves. One of our common failings is to depreciate our tremendousness. I truly believe that. Shortly becoming out of my recovery program, and I must say, recovery, when you put yourself in a rehab center, is not a recovery. There's so much more to a full recovery that comes than just putting yourself in a rehab center. That was just the purging, because it's absolutely necessary that we purge ourselves of our addictions before we can be rehabilitated. And I went through that purging process, but then I needed some real help. I didn't have the LDS program with me at that time, so I did AA, NA. There's all kinds of programs. If you look in the paper, they will have those advertised if you're not of an LDS faith. If you are of an LDS faith, they have the 12-step program. The 12-step program facilitates all your addictions. It facilitates, as I have been a facilitator, I've seen eating disorders, people that have eating addictions. I have seen people that have chocolate addictions, shopping addictions, drugs, alcohol, definitely pornography, and sex addiction. And I think it's very important to keep in mind that sex addiction isn't necessarily always just pornography. For me, it was not pornography. For me, sex addiction was the empowerment that I felt and the emotional uplifting that I felt, and to me, a value of love. Even though my life, even though not watching pornography, was very pornographic in my behaviors and in the way that I behaved, which is an addiction. Drug addiction not only destroys the user, it takes the family, it takes money, it robs you of your spirit, and when you have nothing left, it will completely take your soul. Addiction robs our souls from the essential gifts and talents we need to achieve our true greatness. I guess the easiest way, because a lot of you are here because you have addiction. A lot of you are here because you have addiction and you don't want anyone else to know, but you're trying to search for answers. You're here because people do know, and some of you are here probably because you have to be. Some of you are here because you have family members that are wrapped in addiction and you don't know what to do. Or you see it and you don't know how to approach it. And that's the best way, is to start coming to meetings like this, to 12-step programs, which we have more than just addicts that are 12-step programs. We have supporters of addicts that are 12-step programs. And it's essential for us to have that support group in our lives. The 12-step program has literally saved my life. My life has not been without sin. And the program, to answer one person's question, it is a lifetime. But it's not a lifetime chore. It's a lifetime fulfillment of hope. It's a lifetime feeding of God's love. It's a lifetime of working towards a unified goal to return back to our Heavenly Father. I can't think of anything more important for my lifetime. I could either have a lifetime of addiction or a lifetime of really trying to overcome my addiction. I have not overcome my addictions. I am recovering from my addictions, even though I've been clean for 19 years. And I think it's very important. I have noticed that when I don't work my program and when I don't work or facilitate through my program, the 12-step program, I see my addictions become more readily available at grasping. So I think it's very important that as we are working through our addictions, to consistently reach for that goal. I love Eleanor Roosevelt. She says, no one can make you feel inferior without your consent. Shame and pride coexist with your addiction. And I truly believe that addiction is Satan's tool of taking the things that are most important to us, taking the things that are most valuable to us, that our Heavenly Father has placed before us, and turning them into the most destructive and ugly things. I know that my Heavenly Father loves me uniquely. He has been very aware of my progress. And I know that my story is no more different or special than anybody else's in what they're going through. And I know that the 12-step program will help you. I have seen it work in my own life, and I have seen it not work in my life when I'm not doing it. And I testify that if you continue these programs, you will be free. Because addiction binds you. It keeps you from being your greatest self. My support group is my family. A husband who understands that when I come home and I jump next to him on the bed and he says, "How's your day?" And I said, "I need a drink." He doesn't take that as a negative thing. He takes it as, "Wow, you've really had a bad day." He's there for me to open up to. He's there to not judge me or shame me, but he loves me. And there's nothing greater in my life than having that support. I went back home recently to visit my family. And there's 15 brothers and sisters. My parents come from, I have 8 with my 2 parents. They divorced, of course, because addiction and abuse destroys lives and families. Out of all 15 of my brothers and sisters, 12 of us are all addicts. Out of the 12 of us, 2 of us have received help. One of them, I thought, had received help was my father. Going back home, he came over to visit at one of my brother's houses, and I walk into a room and see him indulging in pornography. So the question, how do you bring that up? Such a sensitive nature. I put a lot of prayer into that. First going to my room bawling, calling my husband. Recently, I called my dad on the phone because I could not approach him. I didn't know how. It was devastating. And I said, Dad, I love you, and I've lost a lot of sleep over this. But here's what I saw. And I want you to know that I love you. And I'm so sorry you haven't beaten it. But you can get help if you really want. He recently called me last night for my birthday and said, I'm going to get help again. And I said, that's all you need, because Heavenly Father's there for you too. Addiction is not prejudice. It doesn't care if you're rich or poor, fat, skinny, young, old. It will take you. But God is not prejudice. He doesn't care if you're fat or skinny, young or old. And He is more powerful than addiction can ever be. And I have a true testimony of that. I have a testimony that this program truly works. I'm so grateful that my Heavenly Father has taken a vested interest in me and helped me as I continue my recovery through the 12-step program, and as I help other people by facilitating. And I know that as you pray in any religion that you're in, and you go to your Heavenly Father, He will aid you and help you through this program.